right, good afternoon, everyone. I'll try to get you out of the afternoon dip. So, talking about shipping, it's something that gets me enthusiastic 24/7, 365, less on the Sunday afternoon, though, when things go wrong. I guess some of the exporters here will concur with me on that. I think shipping is sometimes a bit considered as the black sheep in this whole supply chain. And I think the main reason for it, people don't know much about it. People don't see the ships. There may be 1-2 days in port, and the rest of the month they're sailing somewhere on the ocean, so only the lucky ones with the super yachts can see them at the seas. So what I want to share today is a little bit of what we do to give you a little bit of an insight. Happy to take any questions afterwards. Now, when it comes to shipping, I say people don't know much about it. I was in Napier a while back, and Napier has a little hill with a park looking down over the port. And people go there for a picnic. And I was sitting there watching one of our ships coming in, and people having this argument on what are these ships actually about. So there was one couple actually, and the guy was convincing his girlfriend we were actually transporting nuclear waste. Good suggestion. There was another family. Apparently we were an American Navy ship, so I guess we still have a bit of work to do here in explaining what we do. All right, just a little bit of background on Livestock Express. We're part of a family-owned business in the Netherlands, which is called Vroon. We run about 150 ships worldwide. So we're involved in a lot of industries like the container business, dry cargo, car carriers, tankers, and we've got a bit of exposure in the offshore. And livestock has been started about 50 years ago. Townsville is a big port for us where we go. With the ship leaving on Tuesday this week, we've exceeded 100,000 head of cattle exported out of Townsville on our ships in this year, and getting well over the 500,000 head totally moved on our 14 ships for the year. So Townsville is a big port for us this year. It used to be a bit more located in Darwin, but a lot of big numbers going mainly to Vietnam. So I think it's interesting for people to understand a little bit more of what we do as a company. It's good to mention we are not involved in the trading, so we work with all the different exporters. We are simply tonnage providers, trying to do a best job in transporting from A to B in the best possible way. All right, to give you a little bit of a storyline, about over 50 years ago, Livestock Express started shipping. That's the first ship we had is on the left top there. And over the years, we've started to develop vessels, and you learn how things go, how you can do things better. Initially, those were mainly converted container vessels or bulk carriers, smaller hulls, which we then converted into livestock ships. And we still see that happening quite a bit today in the live export industry. In the 90s, we started with purpose-built vessels. So that's what you see on the left bottom there is the first series of 4 ships we built in the Netherlands. We believe the purpose-built vessels allow us to work the ship around the cargo space rather than having to work in your ventilation, drainage, etc. in an existing hull. So it makes it in a way easier to design it. In 2013, we delivered the first of what we call the new series of vessels. So since 2013 up to 2016, we had 7 of what we call the G-class vessels, because they all start with a G in the name, has been delivered to the company, and ever since been trading mainly out of Australia. So what is changing over the time? Obviously, we still go from A to B like we did 50 years ago, but over the time, things are changing, not dramatically, but evolutionary. We make progress in the ships we develop. It's in the same way as you would buy the same model of car 20 years ago. It's looking more or less the same, or not necessarily, but things have definitely improved. You get better efficiency, you have less emissions, the comfort increases, safety increases, and especially in recent years, we've worked a lot of connectivity, which is obviously in the supply chain becoming more and more important. If we talk about the most probably visible change to the vessels, it's the way the hull has been designed. The front side of the ship is looking a little bit different as most of the conventional ships that we have or that you see around. I mean, the biggest change there is you see the wave-piercing front. It's something we've worked on for a very long time. It's been specially designed for us, and it's been tested in the water basins, and thereafter it's been tested in real life on how does the vessel behave. And the main motion that, if you look at cattle comfort, it's the motion of the ship going up and down, and especially the slamming of vessels into the waves. It's what you see on traditional vessels. I've once done a voyage on one of our container ships when I just joined the company. I'd say I got seasick after 5 hours, and it's been a bit of an emotional low, I would say. Wasn't fantastic. But so what's the motion that is for human beings on ships? So on cruise ships, you would see they have stabilizers. But it's the same for the cattle. The motion where you hit the waves in bad weather is where you get this kind of motion for the cattle, which is having an effect on them. They also get affected by that sometimes quite significantly. They stop eating, etc., etc. So what we've done, the wave-piercing principle is actually really preventing those motions. And to take that a little bit to a next level, or at least to have proof of the concept, we have a thing called a comfort class. It's a rating for ships which is independent based on noise levels and vibration. Before, this has only been applied to yachts and cruise ships. So we are now basically the only other type of ships that are having these ratings. We have as well an ability to go online and see real time the motion of the ship to see what is exactly happening, which would then allow us to even take different routes, etc., to prevent the heavy weather, for example. When it comes to noise, that's what we've brought down on these ships quite drastically to under the 80 decibels. The main reason thing we've done to achieve that is to put central fans on the vessels. So we put them, rather than having the fans all in the cargo holds running, we put them on the decks, and they are pushing the air through the ship, and thereby that's also the main reason why we're able to get those comfort class ratings on these vessels. Now, if we talk about ventilation, it's a bit of a hot topic, I would say. What we've done on these vessels is we apply a principle of jetting. It's not a new concept, but we've definitely brought it up to a next level on these vessels. So what you see in a lot of vessels is what you see a bit in the middle picture there is air being pushed in at a very significant airflow and being sucked out on the other side, which creates the airflow. Whereas we've designed it differently in a way where we use the ducting, which you see on the lower picture, where we don't push in air at a certain specific point, but we get air into each individual pan, which is reducing the noise quite significantly, but it's especially about the way the air is delivered into a cargo hold. So by pushing it down to the pad, your pad management gets much easier in terms of moisture, but also for the cattle, the way it hits the cattle, the air, it allows them to remove the heat and the vapor much easier than in the traditional setups. So ultimately, the air is in a way used in a better way to remove the heat from the cattle, which especially if you're doing voyages to the Middle East or you're passing the equator where you have these very hot days, makes a bit of a difference. So a few things on safety, connectivity, and I think that is something that's in the upcoming years is going to be more and more important in our industry, is the ability to remotely access the systems of the vessel, to see what is happening real time, and to exchange information with the vessels. I mean, compared to 20 years ago, you would, a ship would sail and you would hear back from it every now and then. Today, it's completely different. If a ship stops for 1 or 2 minutes, we've got our clients on the phone, hey, what's happening? We can exchange information real time. And I think that's going to be a big changer. If you look at vessels, what is critical? It's all about reliability, safety of the livestock at sea. That's why you look at the EMSA requirements, which is the Australian authorities looking after the vessels. On the ships, we have increased the amount of redundancy we have in terms of engines that are running the livestock services. So you're looking at ventilation, you're looking at water supply, you're looking at drainage systems, you're looking at the lights. In the past, there was a little bit less redundancy on that. EMSA has requirements that whenever one engine fails, you need to have a backup. These vessels basically have 4 engines that can run all this equipment, so we need to have 4 of them failing before the light goes off, quite literally, and that increases the safety, the reliability to cope with situations which, with ships running 24/7, 365, will always have something happening one day, and then you need to be able to deal with that in a better way. One term, when it comes to reliability, you would see as well engine monitoring, vibration monitoring I've mentioned earlier. So what we are able today to do is with our engine makers, we are able to log in remotely. They can see exactly what's happening. So in case there are breakdowns, they can log into the systems and they can actually change, well, they can't change it physically, but they can at least support the crew in managing those situations. If we look at the ventilation side, I've mentioned it briefly as well, that there's been definitely an increase in terms of capacity which we have, which we are utilizing sometimes on purpose. For example, you're passing the equator, you push up the ventilation when that humidity really gets high. But at the same time, it also works as a safety matter, reliability matter. If one fan fails, we can actually, the system automatically actually increases the capacity of the other fans, which still allows you to keep the same airflow, air changes as would be the case in the full system setup. So as mentioned, connectivity becomes more and more important. The exchange, we do daily exchange of pictures. Even before we had the independent observers on board, we were already exchanging on request of our clients. So we do every day, we do a picture of the different decks to get a bit of feedback, see what's happening, to better control the livestock on the ship during the voyage. The same goes for weather information. If ships hitting bad weather, we can reroute vessels. So that connectivity, I think, is becoming more and more important. So what I didn't mention yet, because it's a bit about the ships itself, but ultimately it's about the crews that are delivering the services on the ship. We have a crew pool of about 600 people on our ships, which we rotate, and working together with exporters is obviously extremely important to learn about the livestock and learn how to better manage that. Part of that, I think, is as well comes to back to the ships, where we look at how are we accommodating crew. So we're working on increasing crew cabin space, so each crew member gets its individual cabin, gets his own shower, etc., etc. Those sort of things actually allow them to relax when they don't have to work. So we have got gyms on board. Those sort of things all allow them to be in a better environment, to perform better. I think there's not been any revolutionary changes over the years. I think it's been an evolution in a way where we step by step making these improvements. And over the years, I can safely say that we've increased the way we control voyages. We are much more connected with the vessels, and I think that's the way forward, to keep making those steps and see how we can use other technologies as well to get more data on the ships, to feedback that and improve the outcome of voyages. I think to conclude, it's important to say that if we look at, as a company, we've invested over the years significant amounts of money. We've built 7 of those vessels in the last, since 2013. If you look at owners investing more into this industry, which is needed, I believe, you do need a stable environment to operate. You need the support of the regulation. You need to know what, in terms of requirements, you need to work with. Otherwise, it becomes extremely difficult to make decisions to invest for 25 years in a vessel if you don't know how it's going to look or whether you can operate actually in 3 years from now. And I think for the regulatory framework, there is an ability to make steps as well to incentivize the industry to improve. To mention something, we're looking at the jetting systems of ventilation, which is well known to the industry. It's a better way of delivering air to the vessels. It's not been recognized in the way we do our heat stress management. And those sort of things, I believe, is a possibility for the industry to improve and incentivize ship owners to make those investments and get a return out of that. So that was it. I hope it gave a little bit of an idea of what we do. I'm happy to take any questions, should there be any.
Do we have any quick questions for Lennart? Yeah, Simon.
Lennart, Livestock is because the government required it to, has invested in a program for dehumidification. I'm not too sure whether you've seen the results of the first stage of that, but do you have a view of the effectiveness of this when you talk in the context of future improvements and the need to get them recognised by the authorities?
Personally, I believe if you look at dehumidification of vessels, I think the amount of energy needed to achieve that, it's extremely difficult to make that effective. The simple reason is the amount of air changes you would need in a livestock space to remove the gases, etc., is going to make it very difficult to come up with concepts of dehumidification, or air conditioning is what has been have been talks around as well, because a concept like that requires you to reduce the number of air changes or have massive amounts of energy to do that. So I believe there's much more steps we can take in improving the way we deliver air into vessels and look at different ways to achieve that. And I believe putting systems like air conditioning, dehumidifiers on vessels, for us it's something that I don't believe it's going to happen, or well, that it's economically feasible in the upcoming few years in a way.
Yep, Chris.
Yeah, Christopher Knight, Alice Springs. There's been some discussions about closed circuit TV on boats. Is that possible? I mean, we've got it in feedlots, we've got it in processing works. Is it possible to run a closed circuit TV on a boat?
We actually have on these vessels a simplified CCTV, in all honesty. So we're running about 8-9 cameras on the vessels. The quality of it is not good enough to, say, replace the independent observer footage that we get. We actually make daily pictures. The quality is not good enough to look at that. The complication in these sort of systems is if you want to place them in the cargo holds, you need to clean after every voyage. So you would need very highly durable equipment. But we've done some research in it, and it is something that is definitely feasible. I mean, you would see it on cruise ships, for example. The main challenge in it is to keep the equipment working if you're cleaning at high pressure, etc., those sort of things. And to a certain degree, the amount of data that you would have to, if you realize want to send that to shore, that's going to be quite expensive at the moment. But you could look at things, snap pictures at certain moments which you send on a daily basis. So it's definitely something that's feasible.